Alex, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Could you please introduce yourself for anybody listening?
Yeah, sure. So Alex El-Nemer. I am one of the co-founders and the co-CEO at a company called Creative Control Ventures.
And what does Creative Control Ventures do?
So Creative Control Ventures is ultimately a venture builder that works with high-profile people, so celebrities, influencers, creators, to help them build out predominantly consumer packaged goods. So that could be a skincare brand, a food and bev brand. We've even done a board game once. So basically anything in the consumer space. We've been going for about 2 years now, I would say. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Well, I guess some of the most popular, well, not popular, but the well-known examples that people would first go to for the A-list celebrities would be, was it George Clooney's Tequila?
Yeah, Tequila, Casamigos.
Casamigos and Ryan Reynolds' telephone.
Yeah, Mint Mobile.
Which they just sold as well.
Yeah.
So that's talking at like the top level.
Right.
So if you guys started 2 years ago, was it those kind of things that you saw an opportunity in and you were like, there's a lot of creators out there who would get value from products? How did it all come about?
Yeah, so I guess the origin story really was, my background has been in the technology space, so actually nothing to do with consumer businesses, which is random shift, but it's always been in the business side of a business, if that makes sense. So the tech was the product, and I was the business side of the product.
Okay, what do you mean, like you were selling to customers?
Yeah, so I was much more of like operating and running a business than coding or designing something or whatever it might be. So I always had great people around me, fortunately, that kind of led me to the path I'm on now. But during that process, worked with a lot of creators, their managers, artists, musicians, etc. And what we realized was that there was a massive space for these guys to kind of move a little bit away from the hashtag ad endorsement deal, and start to take ownership in what they're doing. And I think these guys, as much as they love money, making money, a lot of them are looking for impact and to build legacy and to do something more than just their personal commercial brand, and build it to be something bigger. And also a lot of them are looking for what happens post, my career. If I'm a footballer, I have a lifespan of when I'm going to be a world-class footballer for. What do I do post that? The sooner you start to think about what you're going to do post, the better. And so we were just integrating in this space, and a lot of people were coming to us and saying, hey, I've got an idea. What do I do? They've got no idea how to take a skincare concept through to logistics, to business development, to legal, to the funding, to everything you need. And we just thought, you know what? We've built businesses. We know how to scale a business. And we also know how to exit a business. Let's help them through that process. Let's build the infrastructure around them that's needed. And hopefully result in a very successful long-term brand.
So how did you know this? How did you know? You've explained from the building side, but how did you know the exit side? Where did that experience come in?
So myself and my two co-founders have all built and exited our businesses in the past, in some and partially, some fully. And so we kind of know what it takes to set up a business to the point where it's attractive to a buyer. And obviously, ultimately, for every business, you're looking for an end buyer and for an exit at the end of it, which very few people get to. A lot of the time people build brands and it can do really well and can be a name, but actually selling a business requires a lot more than just a successful brand name or a product that's selling okay. It takes much more, and a buyer that has appetite for it. And so setting up our brands from the beginning to make sure that they have that appetite there, that is already ingrained into it, to make sure the commercials are right so that the brand's exciting for a buyer potentially, or making sure that the name is strong enough that is attractive to a buyer. All those little bits that you do whilst you're building ultimately lead to what the goal is, which is to sell the business at the end.
So let's go back a few steps out of this. How did you end up in this world? Because I guess I'm going to go back a wee bit more, not just when you were doing the business development for the tech company, which am I understanding now that was your own company? That was
my company, yeah. So I just do the business side of it as opposed to the coding side. So I had a CTO and a tech guy that built a lot of the technical part.
So let's go back to the start. Where did the interest in tech and business all come from?
Yeah, so I've been one of those, it kind of sounds cliche, but being one of those like schoolboys selling in the school like bags of hula hoops for 50p when they cost 20p.
Classic entrepreneur,
Classic kind of thing where I just love business and I love the interaction that you have with people in business. I was a bit of an outcast, so like my outlet was just do business and be good at something and do that.
Outcast in what way?
So just like I wasn't really that interested in what everybody else was doing. I was kind of like, especially post primary school, which is very far back. But post primary school, I wasn't really interested in just being the same old guy that everybody else could be, kind of like being a different person and doing something unique.
But again, this is a strength, like as a child, you fully embraced who you were. You 100%. Didn't try to fit in. Okay,
yeah, exactly. So I kind of just almost rebelled externally. People probably didn't even realize I was doing that. But to myself, I was like, you know what, I'm not even going to try and fit in and do this stuff. And it's not like I was a massive loser. It was just that I didn't really fit in the same way that everybody else did.
Sure.
And so I just spent a lot of time, like played a lot of tennis when I was younger. And so I just turned all my attention to the things that I knew I was good at, playing tennis and trying to start businesses and trying to start entrepreneurial activities. And so just dug 100 foot deep into that and avoided everything else. And, you know, it's become my biggest strength as a result of that. But at the time, it probably felt like I was just rebelling and doing my own thing.
Well, you flagged tennis there.
Yeah.
Is that because that's something you've continued throughout the rest of your life, or?
Yeah, tennis has been a massive thing. And I attribute actually a lot of my early success to my tennis. So I played tennis, played at like a relatively decent level. I think I got to something like, I don't know, 14 in the country or something when I was like 12 and under, 14, 16 and under kind of age range. And tennis is a relatively elite sport, right? Like a lot of people who play tennis have a lot of money.
Sure.
And so you are interacting with a lot of people that have a lot of money, who have wealthy families, and I didn't go to private school or anything, so I didn't have that access outside of that. And because I was just entrepreneurial and a little bit like probably mature for my age, I met a lot of parents, I met a lot of people that were in hedge funds or finance world or whatever. And at the time, I wanted to make a lot of money. That was my headspace. And so I was thinking finance was the way to go. And so I was meeting hedge fund managers and wealthy private bankers and all this kind of stuff.
Is this a secret life hack you recommend? Then
get into
tennis.
Yeah, play tennis. Or send your kids
people.
To play tennis. That's the way to get in. But yeah, exactly. So then that set me up quite heavily for a lot of the network that I had that led me to a couple of the points. I didn't end up in finance, but it set me up for all the stuff that kind of led to that journey.
Okay.
And, you know, even from the age of 12, I was doing internships at for work experience for people's like banks and things like that. And so it kind of just set me up in this position where I was around a lot of really like driven, successful people who'd made a lot of money. So my headspace was very heavy in making as much money as physically possible. That was kind of where I started. It's changed since then.
Because it's interesting as a young entrepreneur, you reach that path where it's like go off to university, right? But a lot of people who have been running businesses or been around everything you've been kind of want to rebel against university because you just know it's going to be like school, static, essays and stuff. When you kind of reach that point, where were you at?
So with tennis, there's always a decision point when you're playing at a certain level. And I'm sure it's the same across all, you know, elite sport, that at a certain point you decide, am I going to pursue this and make this a career? Or am I going to do a normal life? Because you can't really do both. You can't have a normal life and pursue it. Like that, at that level, you can't go professional unless you kind of give everything up. So I had a decision at probably 16 years old that would I try and be a tennis player, or would I go down the academic route and, you know, go to university and study and career and etc. And I thought it was too much to give up to try and go down the professional route. I loved tennis, but I don't think I saw myself as a full-time career tennis player.
Okay.
So I knew tennis would always be in my life in some capacity, but not at a professional level. So then
you obviously loved playing the sport, but you loved the sport or kind of the world it was introducing you to, or kind of a mix of both?
A bit of both. I think I loved the activity, and I think I loved what it did for me at a point in my life, because it was like I said before, a bit of a distraction from not doing what I was doing or not being liked as much as I probably could have been. So then that was my world. So I just played tennis, and then so it was like quite a nice comfort zone for me to play in, but I never wanted to play it like full-time professional.
Sure.
And then as a result of that, split off from that and went much more down the academic route. I knew that if I wanted to become an investment banker, which is what my headspace was at the time, or become a fund manager one day or whatever, I had to go to university, and I probably had to study finance or economics or something along those lines.
Any preference from your parents at that point about which path they wanted you to go down?
No, luckily my parents are very hands off.
Okay.
It's a great lesson for me in terms of how to parent, because my parents just gave me the freedom to do whatever I wanted. If I decided I wanted to be a ballerina, they would have gone, go ahead, as long as you're good at it and you love it, then do it. So I was lucky that I was given a lot, like probably more freedom than most parents would give a 12-year-old to go on holiday with another family and network.
Okay.
You know, so like a lot of freedom I was given. And then I turned tennis into a business as part of that. So I think at 12 years old, I I did the tennis referees course so I could go and referee tournaments and help running tournaments and things like that, which I was getting paid for. There's one really prominent in Middlesex, because it's spelled like that in counties in tennis. There was one really prominent lady who basically ran all the major tournaments in Middlesex. And then I went and helped her, shadowed her for a while. I think I became the youngest person ever to qualify as a referee in the UK or something at the time. And I just loved doing that stuff because it felt like business, but it was in the world I loved, which was tennis. And started making more and more money along the way, building up more of my own stuff, started helping her run bigger and bigger tournaments, qualifying at a higher level and eventually running my own things. So by 16, I'd already saved a ton of money, which ended up ultimately funding my first business. And at the same time, getting loads of exposure to how to deal with grumpy parents who want their kid to go on the next court free and they can't, and how to set up courts and how to set up the tournament and all the technical side to all of that. So that was kind of like my real business origin start, where it was combining my passion of tennis with something that I could make money from.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of the business start point. And then obviously university was my next like academic point, because I still, as much as I really wanted to be an entrepreneur, I didn't know what that meant in terms of how to monetize that properly at a scale, the scale that I wanted to go
like
to.
you said, you were thinking
exactly
hedge fund finance at this point.
Right. And at that time was very much in the headspace of make as much money as physically possible. So that was the only route. And I was very much in the 2008 mindset where you can make a £2 million bonus in your first year or whatever. Stupid.
No coincidence. I think that's like the year Wolf of Wall Street probably came out or something.
Yeah, exactly. So I was headspace into that, and I did all the things that you're supposed to do to go into investment banking. I did the pre-university internships. I did all the work experience that you need to do, Bank of America, all of those like big players, and was fully set up, ready to go and do that full time. And then I went to university because I just felt like I had to. I thought that was the process that you had to go down. I probably wouldn't have done it if I'd had the choice. Or if I thought I'd had the choice, and I'm as an employer now, I couldn't care less about university on a CV. It's like, it doesn't make any difference to me. So now thinking about myself, if I was hiring myself then, I would have said, don't bother. But I had a great experience at uni, so I can't slate it, but it hasn't really done anything for me in my life.
Yeah. I mean, what did you go off to study?
So I went to do economics in Bath, at University of Bath, which is a really heavy tennis university too. So it was kind of the best of both worlds.
So you continued tennis.
Carried on playing tennis at a pretty decent level there as well.
So did the outsider persona, school's a totally different experience. Uni, you can actually find more people who are like you then. Right. Did you find your kind of people then?
Yeah, at that point. So I was a completely different person at uni than I was at school. Which was great. But it also, now because I'd built the resilience up before that, I now had all the benefit of being the outcast and the mindset of an outcast. But now I was not an outcast anymore, and I was the fun guy that played loads of tennis and was a popular one, a bit like, if you're a college tennis player or you're a college football player, you're popular. And that's just the nature of it. It was kind of like that with the tennis thing too. So played a lot of tennis there, and became a fun person, and then developed my business skills along the way, because there's one thing being a complete outcast and locking yourself away, and being a business person, thinking you're a business person because you're doing business. There's much more to business than just locking yourself away and coming up with a cool idea.
Well, so what business stuff were you doing at university?
So university, I again, just was one of those people that tried everything. I was like, tried to start up a student investment fund where I convinced other students to come and, invest in a pool of money, and we'd invest it in the right way.
Ask Alex, is that like legit legal?
I'm almost 100% sure it's not legal. But luckily we didn't get too far with it. So we didn't get to the FCA point. And I actually had my uncle call me up, because we made a website, because as you do when you're first starting a business, you think the first thing you do is set up a website and get an office. It's not really what you're supposed to do. But obviously we did all those things, and it kind of worked out that my uncle gave me a call randomly one day and was like, what's this website that you set up? And I was like, oh, it's our new investment fund. And he was like, are you regulated? And I was like, we don't have to be regulated. What are you talking about?
What does your uncle do? Was he
no, he's not. He's traded and stuff. He was in engineering, but
he was having the same questions I did.
He's just a bit switched on, and he reads the Financial Times every day, and so he's kind of switched on to that. And exactly the same question that you had. What are you doing? Are you crazy? And then we very quickly realized that students had no money, so they're not going to be investing in a fund.
Good,
and they also weren't happy with 5% interest. They wanted to give me 10 quid and have 1,000 by the end of the week. So that obviously didn't work. And then kind of just tried it was all finance related. So tried just a bunch of different things. tried to build this proprietary trading platform system, started trying to arb different platforms. So we go to a betting company and place a bet there, but then do the opposite, like for a financial trading platform, and try and bet off the difference. And then we'd find new trading platforms. Me and my first business partner, actually my first business, who was one of my best mates at uni. We would like look at financial platforms that were new, realizing that they hadn't really got their systems right yet, and start placing loads of trades on them because we knew we could get a spread and make the difference. So just lots of those little quick win type things. And I was like leaving exams early because I knew that the S&P had a big announcement that day, or the Fed was announcing a rate change or something, and like leaving exams an hour before I was even done just to go and place a trade, which I really didn't need to do. But that's kind of like where I really fell in love with the finance world more so, actually. But I think that, again, I didn't end up going into finance, but that taught me so many things about life and the way to play the world a little bit, because finance is all about people. People don't think that a lot of the time, but when you're trading against a person. And so you have to understand people to understand how to place a trade. And so that taught me a lot.
It's almost like an understanding of the rationality of like the stock market.
Right. It's people, right? There's nothing else in a market except for people. I mean, now you've got a bit of technology as well, that algorithm trading that goes in there. But ultimately you're trading, it's me against you trading in any environment. If we're both trading the same stock, whatever you do affects what I do. So it's much more about understanding people than it is about understanding what you're building. And I think that has been a lesson that's learned all the way through, is that it doesn't actually matter what the product is, as long as you understand the environment in which you're playing in. And that's why the business part of business has always been my preferred place.
Well, just for a curious, I don't want to stay in it for too long, but a curious little segue with the rise of investment platforms and allowing a ton of retail investors to flood into the market. How do you think that's impacted things? Because we're talking about the rationality of it. But now you've got a bunch of uneducated and people of rationality. Were you, I mean, during lockdown, that's when a lot of people hopped on, like sort of Robinhood, eToro. Were you getting back in the game a little bit then to keep you busy? And
do you know what? I actually never did, because because my previous business was a blockchain business. And so I was very much in the crypto world, even though we never touched crypto. And so I saw the banditry that was happening in the crypto world. And I think the same people that are going into crypto are the ones going into all this other retail trading as well. And everybody's desperate for a quick win. They want to make £100 today for nothing, and like whatever it might be. So it scares me to play in that space, because you can't understand the rationale behind it, because there isn't one. Like people aren't making rational decisions, they're just making decisions. It's like basically going to a casino and hoping that you come out with a win.
It's whatever was green yesterday. Like, that must be going up. It looks great.
Exactly. When actually it should be the opposite. Exactly. So it reminds me too much of the crypto space, like trading full stop anymore. I know it's not, and I know that's a much more volatile market than a lot of the traditional stuff, but it makes me nervous getting into that space, because I just see like how much craziness there is going on in there, and try to avoid that.
So you did it back in the day when it was a little bit crazy, not full scale crazy.
Right. And my first entry point to my business was investing in a crypto, which did ridiculously well and made a fortune out of nowhere.
So was this during university, or was this?
This was just post-university.
Just post.
So post-university, my plan was to go back into Bank of America or one of the big banks and become
still hedge fund finance.
Yeah, finance. So still quite in the headspace of finance. I had a little bit of a setback with that world, because I was planning on doing a job that I thought was going to be perfect for me. It kind of went off the table just by chance, really, and just the way it happened, which actually I now count as a massive blessing in hindsight. But I did like 2 or 3 weeks at a small finance brokerage, and it was fun, but I realized that I was just not meant for that world. And pretty much instantly booked a flight to Tanzania and went and did Kilimanjaro, just out of nowhere.
Nice, okay.
I was like, I'm going to escape. I'm going to do some crazy wacky thing. I don't want to do Everest because I don't want to die, but I'll go and do something that sounds cool and is in a nice place and clear my head, where I've got no phone, no access to anything, and let me just do something normal. So I did that, went to Kilimanjaro, climbed Kilimanjaro, and as I was coming back down, I just started thinking, like, what do you actually like doing? Like, what do you love doing? And I realized that it was the business part that I loved doing, not what part of business it was doing. So whether that was tech or consumer now or finance or whatever, it wasn't the thing I was doing. It was the business part of it, and the entrepreneurial side of it, and the excitement of making up your own stuff and building your own thing. And so that was kind of a realization at the end of that. And I didn't have anything to action from that because I didn't know what I wanted to start or what business I wanted to run, but I just knew that was where my head was at. And then when I came back from that, just by chance, I fell into the crypto world and like realizing that the crypto world was a quick win and there was money to be made there.
What year was this?
This was in 2017.
2017.
Okay. So very early days of crypto.
But Bitcoin had still
Bitcoin was still doing a decent stuff. And it was more like the wave of altcoins at that point. Yeah. Altcoins didn't really exist. It was the big players. It was the Ripples, the Bitcoins, the Ethereums, that kind of player. Yeah. But the new coins were all brand new, basically.
There's this like the Doges and
the
Sols
exactly. When all those started
that,
and like the Cardanos when they first like coming out and things like that. So early days, but not that early, but relatively early still. And it gave me a bit of an exposure to there's loads of young kids going and making loads of money. It's possible. Yeah. So you kind of think, oh, you know what, I could do that. And invested in one crypto called Nexus, which is random. It doesn't really exist anymore, the coin itself, but invested in a crypto called Nexus. That went up and down and up and down. I didn't really know about anything about it. So I wanted to learn a bit more. So I started reaching out to their team to understand what was going on. And as I was reaching out to their team and telling them about my background, they started saying, hey, do you want to become part of our team? Because it sounds like you understand how to build this thing and how to actually like function in a business environment. And we're just a bunch of crypto geeks that kind of want to build. Yeah. We don't know how to turn that into a business opportunity. We just want to build cool stuff and mess up the system, really, was really their mindset. So went over to the US. They were based in the US. Went over to the US, started working with them for a bit, and for about 5 months was working with them and just going to conferences and meeting loads of people and networking and learning the space. Quite quickly then realized I get antsy again about being an entrepreneur. So quite quickly realized that I wanted to do my own thing and I wanted to build my own thing off the back of that. And now I knew the space pretty well, had some pretty good connections, made some money along the way. So I had even more money to invest in what I wanted to do. And now knew the US, and I love the US. Now I love the US. So then that was when my first love of being based in the US kind of came around. So then I split off from that business. We turned it away from the consumer side that they were focusing much more on the crypto part. And we separated off and built an enterprise side of the business, essentially, where we focused on selling the core technology, which was the blockchain technology, to major, companies such as AXA Insurance, UPS.
Sorry, just to understand. Yeah. Did you leave Nexus and create something new using the Nexus technology, or you went to them being like, I want to create a new branch?
Yeah, no. So we took the technology because it's open source technology, so anybody can take it.
Right. Okay.
But we took a lot of the expertise, and one of the main tech guys there came with me because he was much more pro what I was trying to, like my vision of what it was going to become. And so we forked they call it fork the technology, developed it out a little bit further, made it much more enterprise friendly rather than public friendly. Okay. And then built a bunch of applications on top. So a supply chain application, a music application, and all these things. Right, okay. Which is where we really saw the value of the technology being, rather than as a coin, which can be overinflated and messed around with and everything. So then we started doing some consulting with some big players like, the AXAs, the UPS. And that's when we worked with Sony Music. And that was kind of the origin of what has become now Creative Control Ventures, because that was my real entry point to the music and the entertainment world, and I guess the high profile celebrity world. Okay. And so worked with a lot of this. I'm skipping like a million miles ahead here, so if I'm going.
But this is still the Nexus business.
This is still the Nexus business. Yeah. So then it became Nexus Enterprise, which is what we built, and that built up, and we worked with a bunch of people. And then during that process, I think it was just before lockdown. Got approached to acquire the business and bring it as part of a bigger conglomerate. I can't talk too much about it because it's kind of still like under wraps a little bit, and it's still kind of semi-exiting. But at that point,
but that was you're saying it was just coming into the pandemic.
That was just going into the pandemic. So that was about 2020. I want to say around that time, probably more like late 2020 or mid to late 2020.
So you had to kind of keep working there for a couple of years.
Okay. And at that point, the business was becoming much more about technology and less about selling into business at that point. And the tech's really good and really valuable. So we were kind of winding down the enterprise side and more just focusing on building great IP.
So when they came to acquire it, we spoke about your younger self being money motivated. So obviously this was a financial reason. Yeah. Were you getting bored of kind of what Nexus was doing? You said the entertainment side was coming in. Had that kind of caught your eye? So was it just
massively
the right time for things?
It massively. So I wasn't getting bored necessarily because I still loved what I was doing, but I wasn't interested in that space. And during that process, you mentioned about the love for money part. During the process of building Next Enterprise, I lost pretty much all interest in making money. All I wanted to do was build impact and like impact people around the world. And I realized that the technology I was building couldn't really do that in a way. You know, I could impact the bottom line of a major corporate, but I couldn't really impact an individual on a big level. And so my whole mindset changed from wanting to just make as much money as possible to still wanting to make as much money as possible, but with the intention of using it for impact.
So obviously you wanted, like you said, you wanted to have an impact on the individual.
Yeah.
Where did that stem from?
I think I just saw a lot of like what money did to people and how uninspiring money can become quite quickly. I think I've always kind of had a deep want to like help people in general. I've never really, even when I wanted to make loads of money, it was never to keep. It was always to be able to fly someone out or for a holiday or, you know, buy somebody this. I never really cared about, like, I'm not really a consumer person that much. I don't really consume a lot of stuff. So I kind of like quite like hoarding money in the ability to be able to like use it for other people.
Yeah.
And so I think when I started to see a lot of people that are around me who I kind of looked up to when I was 12 to 16, who had loads of money, I wasn't really impressed by any of them. I was like, yeah, sure, you got a lot of money and yeah, you got a Ferrari and you've got a big house, but you know, what does that do for you actually on a day-to-day basis? I'm just as happy as you are. And I take the bus into work and I live in an average house in an average area. So like, what's it really doing for you? Where I saw the happiest people were the people who gave away most of their money or gave away a lot of stuff and time and resource that they had. And actually they were the happiest people, the most fulfilled people. They're the ones that had the most to talk about, that had the best friends, that had the best environment that we were in. It was like, why do I need the money for that? Or why do I need to keep the money for that? I think I still need to build the wealth because then I can distribute wealth. But the need to like spend it and the excitement of buying a Ferrari or buying a big house, it's just like, it was lost on me over a period of time.
So what was it you saw in those people, the people who were giving money away and stuff? Was it, obviously you've explained it's a level of fulfillment, but did they just seem more joyful? Did they seem happier? I mean, what were you weighing up against?
Yeah, I think it just seemed a bit more purposeful. I think they all like felt like they had a passion that they cared about and that there was something meaningful in their life rather than let me get to the end of the day so I can make more money, basically, in a lot of senses. And you find that a lot of these guys that spend all their time talking about the car they just bought or the holiday they just took, rather than, I just flew to Senegal and changed 100 kids' life by supporting in this thing or giving them my time, or I mentor these kids and now they're going to change their whole life, you know, that kind of thing. And I mentor like a kid now as well.
Oh, cool.
And
locally or internationally?
Locally. Just like, because I just think I've always wanted to have a younger brother.
Yeah.
And I only have an older brother.
Okay.
And so I always wanted to just help people, I think, and then like have like be that older brother to a lot of people.
Nice.
But I don't just, I have like one of the big things that I credit like my success to is thinking way too big, generally speaking, in a good way. And so for me,
almost like, and I don't mean as an insult, like a delusional way. You 100%.
Just always I love the word delusional because like that's what I always call myself. I think you have to have a delusional level of like self-belief, one, but two, of what you can achieve, because that's, you know, even if it's 10% of what you've delusionally thought you could achieve is already ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I kind of just like to do really big stuff. I don't really like doing micro level stuff. And so helping one kid, yeah, that's great. And I really enjoy it and it's super fulfilling, but I want to help 100 million, you know, kids or adults or whoever that needs that help to kind of change their life and make them happier. So it's not just about giving the money, it's about spending time, and it's about giving myself the freedom to spend the time with them and setting my environment up so that I can do all of that. So it became very heavy about impact. My whole story became much more about impact. And alongside that, passion, like loving what I did. I didn't want to be unhappy and making money. I wanted to be happy and making money. And if the compromise was not making more money, I'd much rather pick that route than be unhappy doing what I'm doing.
So the point at Nexus, do you think it was kind of just the perfect point of where you were starting to feel unfulfilled and you were doing like little work, not the big picture stuff?
Right, exactly. And I kind of basically from late 2019, early 2020, even before the acquisition kind of came about, I was very much in the headspace of there's something else out there for me. I don't know what it is just yet, but and during that period, I happened to meet my now business partner, who was also selling his business, and we were like, we're going to do something together one day. We don't know what it is yet, but we're going to do that. And so that then kind of even more put me in the heads, and he was in music entertainment world, and so that put me even more in the headspace of, okay, you know what? Next Enterprise has had my attention for long enough. I think it's set up in a way that it can kind of do its own thing. And I had a really great business partner in that business who's still one of my best friends. So I trusted him that he could deliver it to the level that he needed to. And I kind of just took a step back really and focused on what I was going to do next and what was going to be the big thing that could do the impact that I wanted it to.
So did you take a break between the exit? Did you give yourself space to think, or did you and your friend basically jump straight into what you're doing now?
We kind of did. It iterated a couple of times, but we pretty much jumped straight into it. We first were talking about a music fund to like invest in music businesses. So going back to the finance world again.
I'm totally expecting some point in your life a fund is an investment fund.
It's going to come for sure. But we kind of, that was the obvious route to go down because we both had a bit of money at that stage. We knew people with money who could support and invest in the fund as well. So that kind of seemed like the obvious route. What we quickly realized, again, the same way I did when I was in university, was starting a fund is not as easy as it sounds, however connected you are or whatever. The process. What was
the tough part? Like getting money from
more just the regulatory side.
Okay.
So I tried, again, I didn't spin up a website this time, but I did think that it would be a lot easier to get that process going. I just thought once you've got the money, you can make it work. But actually, there's a lot more commercial aspect to it and legality as well. You have to trade under someone else's umbrella. You have all these things that you've got to do. And we were never going to do it, like make impact with that, really. We were going to help some people and sure there might be a subsequent impact, but we were never going to directly impact people. And so we just said, look, we'll find a way to work together. Kind of just went off and did little bits here and there, kind of took a break as well from the craziness of what business can do to you. And I was still involved semi in Next Enterprise. I was still having to keep things ticking over there. But then David, one of my now business partners, came to me with the idea of kind of helping celebrities build out businesses. And when he brought the idea, I was like, that's an absolute no-brainer. Like they've had 100 conversations around this in the past. Well, so let's definitely do that.
I don't want to word this the wrong way, Alex.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm curious is, you want to have like a positive impact, and some people would maybe potentially argue that, celebrities, well-known people get enough good opportunities.
Yeah.
So I'm quite surprised you went down the help celebrities angle with impact. Not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I'm just surprised from everything we've said.
Yeah. So I think that would be, if it was like black and white like that, and it was about making money and making celebrities richer, I would like totally agree. But because I'm thinking at massive scale, I mean, I can impact people and go and volunteer for a charity and do that. And I can consistently impact people at a micro level every day of my life if I wanted to do that and stop that. But I want to do this at a massive scale. And the only real way to do that is play in a game where people have a massive audience already. And so with celebrities, you have that. You have a massive social currency that you can tap into 1 million, 10 million, in some cases, the bigger they are, 100 million people instantly with a product, or with anything that you're kind of selling. And so as long as the brands that we were building with those people were impactful brands and not just a quick win money making scheme, we could impact hundreds of thousands, millions plus, which is what Nala's Baby, which was our first brand launch, has done.
Sorry, what's Nala's Baby exactly?
So Nala's Baby is a natural baby skincare brand that we built with Krept from Krept and Conan, who you might know, and Sasha, was Krept's partner at the time, and they had a daughter called Nala, which is where the name Nala's Baby came from. And the origin of that business was, they were having a baby, first-time parents, didn't really know what products were out there, and as they started to realize how bad the products were out there, and you've got the Johnsons, which they've recently had a massive cancer lawsuit around it, which is what we all probably grew up on putting on our skin. So better go get checked. But
my neuroticism is immediately kicking in.
The couch is shaking. There's been these historical brands that haven't really done anything for innovation and aren't natural and aren't good for your skin necessarily, but are cheap. Or you've got the alternative, which are the really natural ones that are more scientific, but cost a fortune and aren't accessible to the everyday parent. So as they were kind of just making home remedies for Nala, they started to realize that there was a business in this. And that's when they came to us. And Shaz, my other business partner, she was already working with Krept on some other stuff around his restaurant. Okay. And so she said, come into this thing, and we've got this basically incubator that can help you build this out and do it at scale. And it became way more than just a home remedy, put together something natural kind of business. And the whole message was, this has to be basically all natural. So most of our products are 99% natural, which is basically as high as you can get for a skincare brand. And all of our products are accessible and are affordable for the average day person. And that was our message from the beginning. And obviously there's a challenge with that commercially, but that was always our value. And it had to be, that from the start. And so that brand launched in June of 2022. We launched in 400 Boots stores at the time. So It was Boots was our first rollout, and obviously on our own site, and sold out 4 months worth of stock in about 2 weeks. And the amazing thing of that, which feeds back into the impact part, was the response from parents and families around what the product was doing for them. Kids were going from red rashes all over their arms to putting on Nala's baby lotion and completely clear. Kids that have never smelt like babies before because they have to wear medical products all the time because they've got terrible eczema, now have clear skin and smell like a baby again. And so the feedback from that and the response to that was ridiculously incredible, and feeds 100% into what is the business's mission, but also my personal mission 100%. To create as much impact as possible.
That's quite interesting, because getting relationships with the direction it was going, I was instantly assuming, D2C product, just them selling on a website or through the Instagram page or whatever. Getting relationships with places like Boots and stuff, that's obviously something you guys are able to bring to the table.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Because you come from a tech company originally, but you said you like the business development. You're obviously a people person.
Yeah.
Where did the supply chain store relationships come in?
Yeah. So you're right about that. It's a big piece because it also adds a massive level of credibility to any brand you're launching. I think the typical route for an influencer or a celebrity is just to launch a quick win product.
Yeah.
And we, from the beginning, never wanted to do that. It was all about high quality, world-class product, which feeds massively into the relationships with retail, because they're only looking for products that are going to be here for the next 5 years, not products that are going to be on shelf for 6 months and then disappear. So we always call ourselves a product first business, even though we're a celebrity. Celebrities are a big part of it.
Because you work with your partners.
Yeah, we work with them to build out the product
from the ground up. Yeah,
exactly. And so the product has to be world class, and it has to be category changing, and it has to be innovative, and ideally one of a kind. And before you add in the celebrity element, because even though we work and our partners are all celebrities, we try to deleverage the celebrity from the brand. Like if you look at Nala's Baby, Krept will post himself, but he's not all over the front page. He's not there holding a bottle. It's much more about building the product to be super valuable and the brand to be super valuable, and the celeb is a amplification factor to that.
So do you do both angles? Do you find celebrity partners and create products with them? Because I know you said they approached you. Or do you sometimes come up with an idea for a great product and then approach a certain celebrity?
Yeah, it's both. It's both. Yeah. So in the case of Nala's, obviously Krept approached us with a concept. Yeah. In some of others, they come with a concept. Sometimes they come with a category that they really like and they just think there's space to improve on. But in a lot of cases now, actually more so than ever, is we develop great IP and a product that we know will sell well based off our conversations with retail and investors and everybody. And then we find somebody that has a real authentic story around it. So I can give like a random example. I don't know, like a Mo Salah, for example, who's Muslim, big name. Doing a non-alcoholic drink with him would be a no-brainer.
Sure.
Or a fruit drink that takes people away from drinking, for example. So that kind of thing where they would have an authentic story and you can see the story behind the product, because otherwise it's just someone putting their face on a brand again and it loses its value. So there still has to be a really authentic story to it. But in cases we will build out the product so that we know the product's already great. And then the celeb, kind of comes in and provides everything around that.
Yeah, like supplements it.
Yeah.
So how did you get the product into Boots?
So back to the retail relationship. So Shaz had a previous food brand that sold into a lot of the major retail.
Okay.
So she launched the first real ready meal halal brand, ever out there here in the UK. And the whole reason behind, her doing that was that she was looking at everybody else eating these amazing like shepherd's pies and other meals. None of it was halal. And so she couldn't eat any of it. And she was like, why can't the 3 million Muslims in the UK also have, access to the same level of quality food that everybody else does at, again, affordable prices? So she had the impact stuff built very heavily into what she was doing already, which is why it's kind of been a perfect synergy between the three of us. But she was building that, and then she built that brand out to the point where she was selling into, I think, all the major retail in the UK, quite a lot of retail in Europe and the Middle East. So had a very deep network. And because it was a first of its kind brand, she had good relationships quite high up.
Okay.
And it was a cool story. It's a good story for Sainsbury's to say we're stocking the first ever halal, ready meal brand. So she got very close to very senior people in those businesses.
People like to be made to look good.
Right, exactly. And her background was that she's always been in consumer. So she used to work with Peter Jones and she used to work in like those environments. So she's always been a retail, distribution, supply chain type person. Okay. So she's our wizard on the retail side and the operational side, really. And so she knows what it takes to deliver into retail. She knows what it takes to surpass expectations in retail, and obviously has the relationships within retail to get the listings and to get us access to those people. So that's a key piece, obviously, in every journey for our brands is getting that retail play, because it's a stamp of credibility. Nala's Baby launching on its own DTC website is one story. Nala's Baby launching in 400 stores in Boots is a whole nother story.
Yeah, it's like talking to a couple of people about how do you stand out in like competitive markets, and D2C especially. It's so easy for people to get like a landing page up, get some influencers or be an influencer and post it. But having that extra accessibility to retail is like a huge USP for you guys.
Yeah, massive one for us. And also it's not just getting into retail, it's also staying in retail, which is an art in itself, because you deliver late for retail, you're in trouble. You miss a window, you're in trouble. You off shelf for a week because you sold out, you're in trouble. All of these things that just lead to you never being able to work with retailers again, because you're just not a trusted supplier.
Right.
So the art of dealing with a retailer too is something that we offer generally as like a big USP, because it's not as easy as just going, I know someone at Boots, let me message them. There's much more to it than that, and the whole journey and the whole process to it that makes it really big. But so actually the operational side is more important to us than just the relationship.
Yeah, because no one thinks about those risks, and you've got to reduce that, and having that knowledge and expertise just puts you guys that level above. You don't have to name them. Do you guys have much competition in the UK, or are you guys quite specialised?
Yeah, we are quite. I think there's people that are trying to do what we're doing. I think there's people that do it on the more influencer side, and they're much more of the people that will go, what's a quick win product that we can put someone's name on and sell, which is great. That's great revenue stream for those influencers and a great revenue stream obviously for those businesses too. But it isn't really what we want to do. We want to build the next set of major brands. We want to build the players that knock the Johnsons off the shelf. We want to build the major players that are here for the next 50 years. So that's why we so heavily focus on product. The celebrity part is just an extension of what we do. So whereas the others are playing very heavily into the celebrity part and focus way less on the product and brand, and which works in an occasion, but isn't a long-term play. The only other real competitors for us are the big brand houses. So the Unilevers or the LVMHs or Johnsons, who obviously have tons of capital, a massive distribution network, and can spin things up very quickly. They're the real competitors, but they're the competitors for us when we're competing. Heinz recently did something with Ed Sheeran. which is, he's got Tingly Teds. I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I remember the one he sent them an advert he wrote for them.
Yeah, which was, I think, was ketchup, and that kind of started it. And so they ended up bringing a hot sauce out randomly with Ed Sheeran, and that's really our competitor. You know, you've got a massive player who's a historic player who's got the infrastructure that we're building. But you're never going to, as a celebrity, you're never going to get a good deal with that brand because they have all the leverage. With us, we're going to build with you. We're not building for you, and you're not building for us. We're building together as partners. And we make that very clear from the beginning whenever we start with them, is like, we're going into business together. This isn't an agency relationship. This is, we're working together and you're now my business partner. And I think that works, way better than an endorsement deal or a deal where one party has all control and nothing.
Skin in the game makes the difference.
Right.
But I guess that means you have to be extra careful, because someone like Ed Sheeran is an unknown entity, how they work with businesses, how they're perceived behind the scenes. But when you're choosing like certain partners, you have to go through a real process, right? Like meet them, make sure that they're not going to be totally unreasonable, make sure they're kind of understanding of an equity split. I mean, I imagine is there a huge education piece there? Yeah,
there's not necessarily so much of an education piece, it's more of a learning process. Just like you would with any co-founder in a business, if you don't know them historically and you're learning to meet them and understand what they do and how they act and what they get annoyed at and what they are okay with, it's the same with this. It's that you just have to learn the person a bit, learn what motivates them and what they're really excited about. I think one of the biggest problems that where you have got this graveyard of unsuccessful celebrity brands. There are ones that fail, right? And probably more common than not than you'd probably think. So there is a historic thing of brands spinning up and disappearing. And I think a lot of the reason why that happens is because of an underestimation of what it actually takes to build a business. And this is a real business. This isn't sell 500,000 units and get out. This is like, we want to sell 500,000 units, then go to 1 million and stay at 5 million for the next 2 years. It's much more serious, and that's a long term. It's like getting into a marriage, right? A business partnership. So understanding that you fit and that works, understanding that they're properly motivated to make sure this happens, because they're also extremely busy people too in their professional life and their career, whether that's a musician that's on tour or whatever it might be. So understanding the commitments that needed, and then just having a love for what you're building, which is why the authentic story is so important, because if they don't love it now, just because they're making money, they're not going to love it in 2 years' time. So they have to love it for a very long time until ultimately, hopefully you sell it.
Yeah, and I can already tell that wouldn't feel right to you, someone just flogging a product they didn't believe in. But this sounds like a really good position for you as well, because you've got the people, you're working like a new project every time, a product you really believe in, a product that you know is going to have maximum impact.
Yeah.
So where do you see the business going? What's the plans? Obviously, it's work with more people, build more products. Is there any sort of areas outside of that?
Yeah, I think in the short term, it's obviously launch these brands, because we're still relatively new, right? We're still proving out the concept. We've had a successful brand, Nala's Baby, but we want to continue building that out and bring out more and do more. And so proving that concept out a bit further, obviously, is one part. But then scaling up what we're doing it at a bigger level, doing it in more markets, more global. We consider ourselves like a rapid growth company, and we want to grow very quickly. And so all of the stuff that comes as challenges along the way of that is obviously something we have to manage. But yeah, we want to be a global brand. We kind of always say, if Unilever was to build today, how would it build? And we believe that's how we're building our business. So I know Unilever is a humongous company, so it's a very lofty goal, but that's the process and the journey that we're on, is to getting to that level.
Is there any product you would be specifically excited to make through this company?
Yeah, I think, again, any product that has a serious level of impact. And impact can be more than just an individual feeling better about themselves because they've had our product. So like in Nala's case, it's like you couldn't be much more impactful. You've got a baby that's now not bleeding at night because they've got their skins cleaned up. So it's about as impactful as you can get really with that. But I think any product that has a real opportunity to provide impact, I'm not really pro any one space, but I think I like spaces like non-alcoholic, because I think that has an impact, taking people away from the necessarily drinking culture where they're not only drinking because they feel like they have to. If you want to drink, then great, go ahead and do it. But if you don't want to, but you feel like you have to, then that's impact, that you're stopping someone from feeling that way. And then I think anything that makes people feel better about themselves. So if it's a product that makes you look better and feel stronger or feel healthier and a better person, I like all of those things. So the impact, I think, is ultimately impact to make people happier.
Yeah.
And I hopefully most of, if not all of our products follow that trend and follow that.
Alex, I was almost wondering if you were going to be like a tennis racket, because is the tennis just fallen to the wayside? Because we've spoken about everything that's going on in your career. Business is going great, the exit, but curious about like the hobby and the passions outside of it. Do you still get much chance to do that?
You know what? I try to avoid personal opinion when it comes to product. I try to not like lead on what I would want. Otherwise, I'd have a private jet company and a hotel chain. But I try to, just focus on what would make other people happy, which is typically like the theme of most of the stuff that I've done the whole way through. With regards to hobbies and time, there's not a lot of it available because we're building something so big that it's not just the time that you're spending sitting in the office. It's the time when you're lying in bed and sleeping and thinking about the next day's investor meeting or the product launch or whatever it might be. So there's not a lot of time. I'm trying to get back into it and trying to free up time by hiring really great people, which we've done somewhat. But there is a limit to how much you can do in a day, and something has to give eventually. And so what gives is typically the thing that isn't progressing you in the direction that you want, which would be tennis right now. I definitely want to get back into it, but not right now.
Yeah, right now it's all work focus.
Right now it's all work focus. And I love what I do. Yeah. So if I didn't enjoy what I did, I would have stopped. But I love what I do and I love building what we're building. So there's never a day where I think, I wish I was doing something else, or I wish I could play tennis today. It's like, it's much more, I love what I'm building. This is the sacrifice you got to make that happen.
But it's like you said, you found what really motivates you, which is like having an impact.
Right.
So outside of make sure you're doing something that's just beyond money.
Yeah.
What's like another massive value you have that you share? Like your little brother. What's like the big wisdom you think you impart on him?
I think it's just follow your passion. That's like my number one thing. Follow what you love doing. And it's not saying that you'll never do things that you don't enjoy, because that happens every day. Like every day there's some annoying email or some meeting you have to do because you just have to do it. I think, but ultimately finding what really is your core passion and drives you. And that doesn't have to be something that seems entrepreneurial. It can be, I love, helping the elderly. And so then you work in a care home or whatever it might be. But what really drives you and what is your passion? Because that will leave you happy every day at that point.
Any tips for how somebody could figure that out?
Yeah, I think it's funny because I actually did a LinkedIn post quite recently on that very topic. But I think there's a few things. I think one is break down any pre-assumptions about what you think you should do. Just do what feels right rather than, I know I really want to make money, so let me go into finance, because that was what my route was. And I thought that's what would make me happy, and it just didn't. So I think remove any barriers of what you think you should do or what somebody else tells you should do. I think the next thing is spend a lot of time learning about yourself. I think learning about what really makes you tick. And you can turn anything into a business, right? So if you are an entrepreneur, but you don't know what you want to build, just find out what you enjoy. And you can turn that into a business. If you really love meeting up with friends on weekends, but it's difficult to do so because you can't organize time with them, start an app that does that, or build an environment that makes that possible, or build a social hub where you can get friends down anytime. Like there's loads of things that you can do. So I think exploring your interests is a really big thing. And then I think ultimately just perseverance, like persevering on an effort. Like it doesn't matter what direction you're going in, as long as you're going in a direction, it will lead you in a million different paths. And eventually, you keep iterating, you'll get to where something works. Yeah. But it's a tough journey. It's not easy. That process is not easy. And I say it like it's easy, like finding your passion is just something that's going to happen overnight. That's not what happens. But if you stick at it long enough, it will, and you'll find what you love, and then you go double down on that.
Yeah, it's really a case of just like moving forward.
Right.
You don't need to know where you're going, just take
100%.
steps.
Yeah, 100%.
Perfect. That was great. Thank you very much for that.
No, it's good. Well, I'll try. It's an interesting journey. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. That's ultimately what it comes down to, right? Enjoying yourself.
That's ideal. And that is a perfect note of wisdom to leave people on.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you again.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.